Pedophilia pisses me off because it's one of those topics that you can't even talk about. If you make any kind of comment that sounds remotely like you don't absolutely despise pedophiles, then everyone's knee-jerk reaction is to call you a pedophile by association. So you have to preface every single sentence with, "I don't find kids attractive," and "I don't support pedophiles," just so people will listen to you. But I've said before that I'm not attracted to humans, period. And I assume that people who watch my videos know that entertaining a thought does not mean that you necessarily agree with a thought. So there are several kinds of pedophiles. There are pedophiles which are people attracted to young kids, such as a 30-year-old wanting to have sex with an 8-year-old. There are child molesters who are 30-year-olds who actually do have sex with 8-year-olds. And then there are pedophiles by technicality, which is something like a 20-year-old wanting to have sex with a 16-year-old. And this is also called a pedophilia. What irks me about our society is that it doesn't matter which one of these you are. It doesn't matter if you actually commit the crime, because even if you think about it, you are still seen as just as bad. Now, I have nothing to say in defense of child molesters. They are weak people and have irreparably damaged another human. I don't see them as any different than rapists. But for those who simply have the thought of being attracted to kids, I have sympathy for. Because sexuality isn't a choice. It's something that is part of you and you can't get rid of it. And there are no real options for people who are attracted to kids. You have to keep it to yourself for fear of society branding you as a child molester, or fear of being on some kind of watch list for a crime that you have never committed. And the way I see some people react to them sickens me more than the thought of pedophilia itself. Because they are so harshly judged and hated, and rarely is that hatred about kids being hurt or exploited, or actual things that I could understand feeling hatred about. The hatred is because their sensibilities have been offended, and because it's socially acceptable to hate that person. And all for having a thought and desires that they can't control. I've heard people say that pedophiles deserve to be tortured and killed. Now, I don't believe in the death sentence, even for mass murderers, much less for a person who has not even committed a crime. In the case of pedophiles by technicality, that is someone like a 20-year-old having sex with a 16-year-old, I find the reactions of people even more disturbing, because once again, it is people holding the law as a moral authority. I certainly believe that you should follow laws, but not all laws should be taken as this divine voice. Not all laws are ethical or even make sense. Why does the law decide that a person becomes an adult at age 18? There is no magical leap of maturity because the sun has revolved around the planet exactly 18 times since they were born. Based on personal experience, I would say that between the ages of 16 and 22, most people I have met don't have drastic changes in their maturity level. The age of consent being 18 strikes me as odd. Shouldn't the age that you are allowed to have sex be based on when you reach sexual maturity? Why is it considered such a moral crime and a sick thing to like a 16-year-old? Attractiveness and beauty standards are almost always measured by youth. Pornography distributors especially value youth, and the reason is because we have a natural drive and instinct to breed with those who are young and fertile. In some states, the legal age of consent is 16, and yet you're still viewed as some kind of sicko for being attracted to someone of that age because the general population thinks that 18 is the age of consent everywhere. In Japan, the age of consent is 13, which many Americans view as sick and twisted, but I'm sure the Japanese just see it as normal and consider Americans exceptional prudes. Now, why am I defending pedophiles? Well, the truth is, it's not really about pedophiles. The hatred and stigma attached to pedophilia is just one example of a problem in our society, and that problem is people taking the letter of the law as an absolute moral authority, and at the same time hating anyone who so much as disagrees with that divine voice of the law. You do not have to agree with me. You don't have to suddenly love people who have sexual fetishes that you find disgusting, but I think you should consider one thing. 150 years ago, it was considered disgusting for a white woman to like a black man. 50 years ago, it was considered disgusting and even a mental illness for a man to like another man. What happens when the law and social stigma isn't on your side? What if it was considered a crime to be religious? That even if you don't practice this illegal activity, just having the thought of loving your God is considered disgusting and a mental illness? What if the perfectly consensual, legal pornography that you like is suddenly considered criminal and disgusting and devious by the government? What if suddenly you're considered a disgusting and evil individual because of the color of your skin or your gender? So once again, I do not ask that you suddenly love pedophiles. I don't ask that you tolerate crime. I suppose I just want people to feel some amount of understanding and compassion for those whose thoughts and desires don't line up with their own sensibilities. And maybe have some faith in others, that even though they may have unsavory desires, it does not mean that they will act on them. Thoughts and desires alone don't make you an evil person.